We will now turn to one of the most challenging environments for aid, namely conflict. The Russian full-scale invasion of Ukraine, now close to 4 years, has also resulted in a humanitarian crisis. It is also a real-time test of international aid under extreme pressure.
And first, I'd like to introduce the president of the Kyiv School of Economics, Tymofiy Mylovanov, to present his views on the current situation in Ukraine. And then we'll have a panel, and then we'll reach out to you, surprise, surprise, to kind of harvest your question. Please, Tymofiy.
Thank you. All right, so, but do you want me to, okay. Thank you very much for your time. I'm president of the Kyiv School of Economics. I'm an economist by training. I'm a game theorist, and since 2014 I have been involved in building the Kyiv School of Economics, which is a private university supported actually by you, by your taxes over the years, since 2006, in different programs and different degrees. And even right now we have, I think, at least 6 academic research projects with different universities in Sweden, including, I think, there's Anders here somewhere, yeah, your principal investigator on one of the major joint projects, and Toby is here, and we have a lot of work. And so I thank you very much. And I think Sweden is maybe top 5 country in the world in terms of mass donation support to our school. Given the size of the country, it's amazing, and it's all around the country. I mean, not a lot of people, but you know that we are actually a small school. It's about 1,000 people total, and companies which support us through this war. And we've been there for 30 years, for 2 revolutions. Established immediately after the independence of Ukraine after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So there's a history, there's some kind of continuity to it, which gives a perspective. Now, the emergency of the situation puts me in an awkward position that I want to talk about structural things because I'm a game theorist by nature. But in some sense it's irrelevant. And yet I think this structure is important to understanding why Ukraine has been able to resist and for so long. It's under the surface, but the previous 2 revolutions are very important for Ukrainian resilience and ability to fight Russia invasion. So I want to, I have spent some time preparing and thinking about what's the best mechanism for me to tell you something useful. And it is at the same time about the emergency we live in, and yet it also has some lessons connected to the theme of assistance, development, capabilities, institutions, culture, incentives, and so how to do it together. And I decided just to give an example of this winter at our university. So currently we are the only university in Kyiv which is operational and teaches in person. All other universities have given up. Why? Because it's cold. And when the cold happened in January, I was actually not in Kyiv. I was in a medical clinic in the west of Ukraine. So to me, it was another usual winter of war, okay, if you can put it that way. So it's a little bit surreal, but for me, war is the status quo, and I think it might, I'm very skeptical about negotiations for multiple reasons. I sit on some board, not some boards of experts which are assessing the chances of peace international, and I think I'm pretty skeptical. So for me, it was just another war, but I didn't realize how bad, another winter, I didn't realize how bad it was until I got to Kyiv. When I came to Kyiv, it is much worse than I thought, being in Ukraine, in a village, under bombs. Kyiv is in distress. So, for example, I have 2 apartments. One I bought on purpose, like a new small modular housing for this winter. It's a new apartment, pipes bursted. So I don't have sewage there. I have heating because there is a fireplace, and smart me, smart my wife, we bought a lot of pellets, firewood in the fall when it was still cheap. So basically we have heat. In my other apartment, I have water, so I have toilets, I can take shower actually, but we don't have heating. So it's a management problem for me to go to a toilet in Ukraine, in Kyiv. Okay, it's a structure and it's a scheduling problem. So I have to watch how I eat, when I drink, so that I actually time. I sleep in one place and I take shower in a different place. Now, about 4,000 big apartment buildings are there. So the entire population, which is relatively poor or elderly or people who are, maybe not top professionals or non-military, they're in conditions like that. In fact, the people who I went to the front since that, the like military is in a much better condition, because military in 4 years they have gotten used to the situation, so they have figured everything out. They're very decentralized. I mean, they can be killed, yeah, but they actually not getting pneumonia every day. Whereas I have 100 students out of my 1,700 students that I had to move to hotels because they were living in freezing conditions. I have a staff member in whose apartment, not close to her, a Shahed came in. A Shahed is a Russian drone, so basically no windows. They boarded it up, and then the winter is minus 25 Celsius, and she lives there, and she comes to work every day, and she's like, I'm okay. I'm like, get to a hotel, take shower. She's like, no, I'm okay, And then I have a master's student. She's being funded by SIDA. She's heading an NGO with trauma, dealing with very dark kids' trauma. Kids whose parents were raped and executed in front of them. Kids who were shot and survived. Because they bleeded and hid and crawled out of a grave, so like kids like that. And so she's taking care of all of them, but she herself is in an apartment which is 6 degrees Celsius. She gets pneumonia, and she refused. I had to convince her, so we're basically targeting every student and interviewing every student and asking them to go to a hotel if their conditions are, like not good. And adults are worse than bachelor students, professionals are, because they're all heroes, They're all heroes. Everyone decided to be a hero. Instead of taking care of themselves, they take care of everyone else. And then they cannot take care of themselves until it's too late, So we have to take care of them as an institution. So basically, and we're a pretty resilient institution, as you can sense it, because we're the only ones who are operational in Kyiv. But there is a failure of leadership at our institution too. I was in a clinic, our rector was here doing research, talking financial support, and the Senate voted to stop teaching in January. Why? Well, it made perfect sense to them, because kids are freezing, it's very difficult to get to school, public transportation is not working, building is overwhelmed, with all our redundancy systems and generators are failing, it's really, really tough, not enough showers, not enough toilets, nothing. So kids should go to their parents and stay with their parents, No one thought that it's not going to be any better with parents, If we cannot get heating, how is that the parents are going to get heating, No one thought about how we're going to get them back 2 weeks from now. No one thought about the fact that parents most likely will finally convince them, because we'll have all these rebels, we'll have all these bachelor students who refuse to follow the parents' advice and leave the country because they want to be a part of Ukraine. So now what's going to happen, all the parents are going to say to all their kids, we told you so, leave to Poland. And on top of that, the social contract that our school has with the world, with our country during the war, is that we have a draft. I am exempt. I'm not exempt. I have a temporary exemption from draft because I lead a critical institution. I teach. So why is it critical? Well, because while our current leadership cohort is being killed, we have to train the new leadership cohort that the country can continue if the war and when the war is over. That's the social contract. That's why faculty and students are not drafted. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. Otherwise, they have to go and defend the country. And so what do faculty decide? in good faith, they decide to break the social contract. Because they're thinking about kids and they're thinking we can't provide. So that's a failure. 2. So that's a failure. So it took me 3 days, 2.5 days, to overrule the Senate, to overrule the rector, to overrule everyone, and to accept financial risk and everything without having funding. I basically did the following. When I came back from clinic, I looked at this, I saw how desperate situation is in the school, and I said, we reopen. And everyone said, how? Why? Then I talked to the faculty and to the Senate, to everyone, I said, I didn't speak that long. I was very angry, and I said, we had one social contract. That's our answer to Putin. Our social contract is to teach. And so everyone fell in line immediately. So what we did, we raised money, and I think we have a lunch tomorrow, right? And some of high net worth individuals and companies here are supporting us, but we know it only now. We didn't have money, and we still don't have money at the time. But I basically said, we're gonna buy hotels. We identified hotels. We got buses to drive kids. We increased generators and heating. You know, there was a building in which we couldn't bring our temperature above 15 degrees. It's almost a norm. You can sit there, because by the norms, 15 degrees, it's okay. But kids refuse to study there, and faculty refuse to teach, and ask what the problem. And they say, if you sit in a lecture for 90 minutes in 15 degrees, you freeze anyway. Like if you're at home and walk in and get the tea, that's fine. You know, get another sweater. But if you are sitting for, like you right now, and listening for 90 minutes, you will freeze because your fingers get cold. It's very, very painful eventually. So what's the solution? Most people suggested more generators, ran something. I said, let's change the way we teach, make kids move. So it's a mindset also perspective. The only reason we have been able to do it and other schools have not, that we have built a trusted network of partners over the last 20, 30 years, like Stockholm School of Economics, like SITE, like Toby and others, who I know will help us cover the costs and bring the capabilities. At the moment I was making decisions, I knew that I have 1,000 people around the world behind the school who will help us to see the next day. My point here is that capability cannot be built in emergency. And so today I am building capability through this emergency campaign, actually not to address this emergency, but to prepare for the next year. So the fundraising campaign, the leadership training, the lessons learned, everything I'm investing today is to get through the next winter. And the reason I could get through this winter in Ukraine is because we invested in resilience in 2022. And we could invest in resilience in 2022 because we have been investing in partnerships for 20 years prior to that. So we always give aid in emergency situations. But we usually just give enough to cover that emergency and not to build capability for the next emergency. And I think that's the biggest insight for me from Ukraine environment. Thank you very much.